You don't drown by falling into the water. You drown by staying there. Paulo Coelho. If you've never sat with your own pain, if you've never dared to look into your shadows, if you think love is only made of light, then stay away from Pisces. Because when they love, they don't knock on your door. They flood your entire house with memories you never asked to remember, with truths you were never ready to face. They don't just love, they absorb. And if you're not ready, you will lose track of where you end and they begin. Now to Pisces, you weren't born to be the graveyard of dreams that never had a name. You were born to turn sorrow into light without losing yourself in the process. Maybe you're here out of curiosity, or maybe something inside you stirred, ever so gently, when you heard the word Pisces. And if that's true, then you already know. We're not here to talk about gentleness or the fragile emotions people like to romanticize. That's not what this is. We're here to touch the fog that's clung to your essence for so long, the thing others call sensitivity, but you've called it by many other names. Exhaustion, silence, not understanding yourself, always being the refuge for other people's emotions. Because you're a Pisces. You don't feel with your ears, your eyes, or your logic. You feel with an open soul, quietly scanning every layer of the air just to sense who's sad but can't say it, who's hurting but hasn't screamed, who's trying to stay strong just to not be left behind. You feel it all. Every undercurrent, every wound without a name, every breath that ends in a silent sigh. And because no one ever taught you how to filter them out, you absorbed everything. You thought that was love. You believed that if you could feel enough, hurt enough, understand enough, they would stay. But do you remember the last time you laughed without feeling heavy? You weren't wrong for loving deeply. You just forgot one thing. Not every pain wants to be healed. And not every kind of love needs you to dissolve yourself just to prove it's real. You once thought you were born to heal. But maybe you were born to bring clarity. Clarity about where you end and where others begin. Clarity between love and manipulation dressed as pity. Clarity between the light and the beautiful fog that only hides a deep abyss. If you've ever felt yourself fading in a relationship, if you've ever become the sponge, damp, soft, and silent, then stop. Because the next chapter of your life isn't about absorbing more. It's about wringing it all out. Have you ever burst into tears for no clear reason? No explanation, no story, no one directly hurt you. Just a surge rising from deep within, as if some underground stream suddenly cracked open. Empathic Pisces often go through that, not because you're weak, but because someone else's emotions have started living inside you, and you didn't even know it. You didn't learn this from anyone. It's been happening since you were very young. Since the moment you sensed the heavy silence at the dinner table, where no one argued, yet the air still made it hard to breathe. Since the moment you caught a glimpse of sadness in someone's eyes, and it lingered with you for the entire day, as if that sadness belonged to you. You carry within you an open vessel, borderless, without filters. Others only need to step into your space. They don't have to say a word. And still, you feel it. You carry it. You shoulder it for them. And then you start to ask yourself, why do I feel so heavy? Why do I always feel overwhelmed, even when no one's done anything to me? Because you are being emotionally possessed, in silence. You don't just empathize. You absorb. You don't just listen. You internalize. You don't just show up. You allow other people's darkness to inhabit you, as if your soul were a house with no doors. And unless you awaken, you'll continue to live as if every wound is your mission to carry. You won't ask, is this emotion even mine? What part of me is being triggered and pulled into this? Why do I keep carrying till I can no longer recognize myself? An empathic Pisces, without learning the art of subtle discernment, ceases to be a person and becomes a stage where every banished memory, every denied fear, every unspoken shadow comes to speak. You'll find yourself snapping at others and not knowing why. You'll feel sad, deeply sad, even when life seems peaceful. You'll carry wounds with no name, as if they came from another lifetime, and maybe they did. There were times when you burst into tears and didn't know why. Times when a sadness felt too deep, too dense, too ancient, as if it wasn't just you crying, but generations of women, men, children, elders, all weeping through you. You weren't imagining things. You're carrying dreams that aren't yours. Empathic Pisces, more than any other sign, is where emotional memory from ancestors, bloodlines, and collective karma can return to live on. Because you don't have internal fences. You are water. And water, as you know, always finds the lowest place to flow. Always open, always ready, always attracting what is yet to be healed. I once had a Pisces client who told me about a recurring dream. She would walk into an ancient museum. There, every statue bore the face of someone she once loved, her parents, lovers, friends, and on each statue was a tiny sign that read, "Do not touch." But she touched them anyway, and each time the statue bled. What do you see in that dream? That is Pisces, the empath, carrying wounds that have never been named. Not because anyone forced you to, but because your soul is used to answering silent calls, used to carrying the weight for others. You didn't know you were crying for your mother, the woman who was stripped of her right to be fragile. You didn't know you were trembling for your grandfather, the man who survived war and never dared to tremble once. You didn't know you were holding the rage that your entire bloodline was never allowed to express, like a sacred, silent, and exhausted vessel. This isn't mysticism. It's the spiritual residue of history left unhealed. And Pisces is the mirror, the water, the conduit that such sorrow chooses to pass through. But you were never taught how to draw a line. No one told you that to feel is not to carry. No one told you that to listen is not to keep. And so you keep holding. You keep carrying. You keep living as if every cry from the shadows needs someone to feel it on their behalf, someone like you. Since you were very young, you've gotten used to listening, even when no one spoke, to sensing, even when no one asked, to holding space, and even when no one called for it, because you are Pisces. And your soul, for a long time now, has been programmed to feel on behalf of others. No one told you to do this. It's just that in a room where someone is about to cry, you are the first one to go silent. In a family full of arguments, you are the first one to try and smile. You learn to rescue the atmosphere. You became the emotional thermostat for the collective. In your family, in class, among friends, at work, without anyone realizing, you're the one carrying the weight. You hear your mother sigh, and it haunts you all evening. You catch the disappointed look in your father's eyes, and instantly correct your own behavior. You sense your colleague's mood just by the way they walk, and you're ready to rearrange your whole day. No one taught you this, but you do it like a survival reflex. You call it empathy, but if you look closer, you might realize you've been living to regulate emotions for people who refuse to regulate their own. You are not a listener. You've been turned into a pressure release valve. You are not kind. You just don't know how to say, "I'm tired too." You are not the light. You've just turned yourself into a standby lamp for everyone's flickering moods. And the scariest part, you're not thanked, because no one sees what you do. They only see you're fine. You're mature. You always know how to calm people down. They don't know that you too need someone to help you regulate, that you too get tangled, choked up, shattered. But every time you try to speak up, a voice echoes in your head. Don't worry them. They're already tired. It's okay. I can handle just a little more. And so you carry it again. Empathic Pisces, man, without boundaries, will be misunderstood. Not as a person, but as a mobile emotional checkpoint in other people's lives. You sit with them when they're scared. You sit with them when they're angry. You sit with them when they need someone to dump on. And you call it love, friendship, kindness. But no one ever turns around to ask you when you need someone to pour into. Do you have anyone? There comes a day, not necessarily marked by crisis, not necessarily painful, just a single moment when you suddenly realize, I've absorbed too much. You sit in stillness, no one has done anything to you, and yet you feel soaked from the inside out. Soaked by unnamed emotions, by sorrows you once held for others, by anger you once carried on their behalf, by wounds you once neutralized. And then, for the first time in a long time, you no longer feel proud of it. You feel tired. And in that exhaustion, a question quietly arises, not blinding, not jarring, just a whisper. Who am I if I'm not the one absorbing everyone else's emotions? That is the first moment of awakening. Awakening doesn't arrive like a temple bell. It comes like the final drop that makes the cup overflow, and you no longer want to be a bottomless cup. The Piscean soul, when it's gone too far into dissolving, will one day crave to take shape again. You want boundaries. You want borders. You want a distance where you can still feel, but not be possessed. You no longer want to be a sponge. You want to be a lamp. A lamp that doesn't chase after anyone to light them up, nor gets extinguished every time someone else loses hope. You just stand there, steady, warm, clearly shaped, and from that light, those who need it will come close. Those who are ready will see. The awakening of an empathic Pisces is not about shutting down. It's about knowing when to open and to whom. It's about learning to ask, is this truly my emotion? Where inside me is being touched? Does this person truly need me, or are they just looking for someone to dump onto? And you learn to answer these questions without feeling guilty. You learn to keep your light for yourself, not out of selfishness, but because you finally know. Light without boundaries burns its own source. You begin to see clearly. Just because you can feel someone doesn't mean you have to carry them. Just because you understand them doesn't mean you have to stay. Just because you love them doesn't mean you have to save them. Empathy, when rooted in a solid spine, is no longer a path of dissolution, but becomes the sacred art of sovereign presence. You once believed that if you were empathic enough, the other person would change. If you were forgiving enough, they would stop hurting you. If you loved with everything you had, they would cherish it. They would see you, they would awaken. But they didn't, and you stood there, lost in the haze of emotion, hurting, understanding, and justifying someone else's wounds all at once. You spoke for them. You thought for them. You carried the reasons for their coldness, their violence, their silence, their neglect. An empathic Pisces, when not yet awakened, can easily confuse love with salvation. You didn't realize that what you were doing wasn't love anymore, but a sacrificial ritual of compassion being manipulated. You believed, if I hurt in their place, they won't have to. If I can just keep the light alive, the darkness won't devour them. But you forgot, people only heal when they want to heal. And if they're not ready, then all your efforts serve one purpose only, to drag you down with them. You began to feel exhausted, not because you didn't love enough, but because you were going against someone else's right to choose. You were saying, I won't let you fall. While what they might truly need is to fall, to finally hit bottom and see it. Do you know that even light can become a cage? That kindness, when misplaced, can turn into a form of delusional control. Not every soul is seeking healing. Not everyone is searching for light. Not everyone is ready to face their own wounds. And the cruelest part, the more you try to lift them, the more they resent you, because you're doing what they're not yet willing to do for themselves. An empathic Pisces, if they don't recognize this, can spend their whole life calling back ghosts who don't want to be released, pulling close those who have no intention of changing, trying to heal souls who are only looking for a place to hide. You're not a bad person. You just haven't yet learned the gentle art of saying no. I see your pain, but I'm not here to carry it. I care for you, but I will not bleed for you. I am present, but I will not dissolve. You cannot change anyone. You can only be steady, luminous, kind, so that if they choose to step into the light, they will see you still standing there, not as a savior, but as a soul who has learned some lessons must be paid for with their own pain. After all the times you've ached on behalf of others, carried unnamed sadness, endured one-sided relationships that only poured into you, quietly step back after every misunderstanding. Something strange begins to happen. You start to remember yourself, not the pleasant version you built to please everyone, not the reasonable, understanding, emotionally available persona everyone turns to when they're vulnerable, but something deeper, a soul that was never fully named, a part of you that was once buried beneath emotional responsibility, a part of you that got silenced under comforting words you gave others, a part of you that was never allowed to truly be sad, to rage loudly, or to walk away without turning back. And for the first time, you want to meet that part again, not to redeem it, not to heal anyone through it, but simply to exist as a free soul. You begin to understand that empaths are not born to endure. You are not a sponge for other people's pain. You are not a candle that burns all the way down, just to warm someone who has rejected their own light. You are light, but you are conscious light. You choose where to shine. You choose who gets to see. You choose who is worthy to be in contact with your energy. Because in the end, you realize empathy is not about dissolving. Empathy is the ability to stand fully in your own light and still feel the pain of others without being swallowed by it. You don't need to prove your kindness. You don't need to save others to feel worthy. You don't need to exhaust yourself just to be deserving of someone's affection. You just need to remember who you are when there is no one left to lean on. If you are an empathic Pisces, you don't need anyone to explain what pain feels like. You've walked through it many times, in silence, in shattering, in the gentleness that was misunderstood, in the eyes of others who had no idea how many feelings you'd swallowed that weren't even yours. You once turned yourself into a mirror so others could look into it and see themselves more clearly. But you forgot to turn the mirror back to see yourself. Today, if you're tired, if you're overwhelmed by emotions and things you can't even name, if you're withdrawn and no one understands why, then know this: you are not wrong. You are simply reclaiming your boundaries. Empathy is not sacrifice. Empathy is not burden-bearing. Empathy is not meant for you to dissolve into those who are not yet ready to hold you. You don't need to become the darkness to understand it. You only need to hold your own light and choose who gets to touch it. Because light doesn't need to explain itself. It only needs to be there, steady, awake, and deeply aware. You no longer have to hurt on someone else's behalf in order to be loved. If you've read this far and feel like you've just seen a reflection of yourself, leave a comment. You're not the only one who feels everything. Too soon, too deeply, too truthfully. You are not alone in your journey to reclaim your energetic sovereignty. And if you need a place to be truly seen, subscribe to the channel. Because here, we don't pretend to be strong. We're just learning how to shine without being burned.